Hey there, and welcome back to ClearPath Conversations. I'm Mark Bernardin. Last episode, we talked about building a renewal narrative that doesn't depend on ROI slides. We covered the 3 layers of a strong narrative: operational evidence, strategic alignment, and customer voice. The core point was simple. The renewal story has to be owned by the customer, not just presented by the vendor. Today, we're going to deal with what happens when the customer pushes back on price. This is one of the moments where customer success managers can really do serious damage without intending to. A customer says something like, the price is too high. Now, the CSM wants to preserve the relationship. They want to be helpful. They just want the renewal to move forward. So they start softening the value posture. They say things like, I understand. Let me see what we can do. Now, that may sound harmless. And sometimes it is, but sometimes that sentence becomes the first step in giving away ground that you will regret. Now, let me be clear about the CSM's role. In many organizations, the CSM is not the commercial owner. The account executive, renewals manager, or the sales leader, they own pricing, the terms, discounts, concessions, procurement, and the contract structure. All of that. Now, that boundary matters. But the CSM still plays a critical role in price objections, because pricing pressure is almost never only about price. Sometimes the customer truly does have a budget constraint. Sometimes procurement is testing the vendor. Sometimes a new stakeholder doesn't understand the value. Sometimes delivery friction has reduced trust. Sometimes the customer's comparing you against a competitor. Sometimes the champion's uncomfortable defending the spend and uses price as the socially acceptable objection. If you treat all of those as the same objection, you're going to respond poorly. The CSM's job is not to negotiate the price. The CSM's job is to diagnose what the objection actually means and protect the value posture while the commercial owner handles the commercial lane. When a customer says the price is too high, your first instinct should not be to agree. Your first instinct should be to understand. There are at least 4 different price objections hiding under that same sentence. Now, the first is affordability. Sure, the customer might not have the budget. The second is value uncertainty. They might not believe the value justifies the spend. The third is comparison pressure. They might be looking at a cheaper competitor or maybe even an internal alternative. The fourth is commercial theater. Procurement might be doing what procurement often does, creating pressure to improve terms. Each one of those calls for a different response. Now, if it's affordability, the account team may need to discuss scope, timing, maybe a phased renewal, or a different contract structure. If it's value uncertainty, the CSM needs to strengthen the narrative and get back to outcomes. If it's comparison pressure, the team needs to clarify what the customer would lose or risk by changing. If it's procurement theater, the CSM shouldn't panic. The account team should stay coordinated and avoid emotional discounting. The mistake is reacting to the words instead of diagnosing the meaning. Now, here's a better response when price comes up. I understand the concern. Before we talk about commercial options, I want to make sure I understand what's driving it. Is this a budget constraint, a question about value, a comparison to another option, or is it something else? Now, you see, that question does two things. First, it slows the conversation down. Second, it prevents the CSM from validating an objection before understanding it. See, you're not dismissing the concern, you're classifying it. And that classification protects the account team from really solving the wrong problem. Now, let's talk about value posture. Value posture is the discipline of staying anchored to the business impact of the partnership, even when the customer introduces pricing pressure. It doesn't mean being defensive. It doesn't mean ignoring budget. It does not mean acting as if price doesn't matter. It means you do not abandon the value story just because the conversation gets uncomfortable. CSMs sometimes overcorrect here. They want to preserve goodwill, so they start sounding apologetic over the price. They say things like, yeah, I know it's a lot, or I agree it's expensive, or we've heard that from other customers too. Be careful. Those phrases can undermine the account executive before the negotiation even starts. They may also teach the customer that the CSM doesn't fully believe the value story. You can validate the customer's need for fiscal discipline without agreeing that the product is overpriced. There is a difference. A stronger response sounds something like this. I understand that every renewal is being looked at really carefully right now, and that makes sense. From my side, I want to make sure that we're evaluating this against the outcomes that the team is relying on, not just the line item. Let's separate the budget discussion from the value discussion so we can be clear on both. That response respects the customer without conceding the argument. It also creates a clean lane for sales. The CSM owns value clarity. Sales owns commercial structure. The customer gets both conversations, but they're not blended into a muddled exchange where everyone starts discounting with no shared understanding of the actual issue. This is where the last episode matters. If you haven't built the renewal narrative before the price objection arrives, you're late. Price pressure exposes narrative weakness. When the value story is weak, the customer evaluates the renewal as a cost. When the value story is strong, the customer evaluates the renewal as a business decision. Now, that doesn't mean the customer will never ask for better terms. They often will, but the conversation starts from a different place. At Proofpoint and in other cybersecurity environments, customer teams often had to defend security awareness, phishing defense, or risk reduction programs to internal stakeholders who were not living inside the security function every day. The value was clear to the security team, but that didn't automatically mean it was clear to like finance or procurement. That's where customer voice and business framing really mattered. If the customer could explain how the program reduced user risk or improved training outcomes and supported broader security priorities, the renewal had a stronger foundation. If the customer could only say, "Oh, we use it," the price objection became much harder to handle. Usage alone rarely wins a budget fight. Let me give you a simple framework for handling price objections without stepping outside your lane. Step 1, clarify the objection. Ask what's driving the concern. Is it budget, value, comparison, timing, or procurement pressure? Step 2, restate the business context. Bring the conversation back to the current priority that the solution supports. Step 3, separate value from terms. Make it clear that the account team can discuss commercial options, but the value assessment needs to be accurate first. Step 4, involve the commercial owner. Do not freelance pricing language. Do not imply any concessions. Do not suggest discounts. Bring in the person who owns that lane. Step 5, document the objection. Capture exactly what the customer said, who said it, when they said it, and what evidence supports the diagnosis. Now, that last part matters because internal teams often hear price objection and immediately assume discount. Documentation prevents that reflex. Here's what that might sound like in a real customer call. The customer says, we're not sure we can justify this cost next year. Now, a weak response is, I understand. I'll talk to the team and see what flexibility we have. A stronger response would be, I understand. Now, before we discuss options, I want to make sure we're clear on what part is hardest to justify. Is the issue that the budget has been reduced, that the value is unclear to leadership, or that there are competing tools being considered? If the customer says leadership doesn't see the value, then you do not have a pricing issue first. You have a narrative strength issue. If the customer says budget was reduced across the department, you have an affordability issue. If the customer says a competitor came in lower, then you have a comparison issue. If procurement simply asked for a reduction, you may have normal commercial pressure. Each answer changes the path. Now let's talk about what CSMs should not say. Do not say, I'm sure we can work something out. You might not be able to. Do not say, we can probably discount. That is not your commitment to make. Do not say, I agree, the price is high. That weakens the value posture. Do not say, let me take that back internally, unless you know exactly what you are taking back. Vague internal follow-up creates confusion. It also causes sales to receive a poorly defined problem. Instead, say, I want to bring the right people into the commercial discussion. Before I do, I want to capture the concern accurately. That's a professional response. It protects the relationship. It protects the account team, and it protects the renewal. Now, there's also a psychological piece here. When price comes up, CSMs sometimes feel personally responsible for solving it. Now, that instinct is understandable, but it is risky. You can't compensate for weak value delivery by overpromising commercial flexibility. You can't repair delivery issues with a discount and just assume that trust is restored. You cannot use price concessions as a substitute for executive alignment. Now, a discount may save a signature. It may also create a worse renewal next year because the customer learned that every renewal starts with pressure and ends with a concession. That is the ground that you regret giving. The cost is not the only margin. The cost is precedent. There are times when commercial flexibility is the right business decision. Now, I'm not arguing otherwise. A strategic account may require creativity. A customer may have legitimate constraints. A contract structure might need to change. But those decisions should be made deliberately with the right people involved and with a clear understanding of what the business is getting in return. If the customer receives a concession, what commitment changes? A multi-year term, executive access, expanded scope later down the road, clear adoption milestones, reference potential after value is achieved. Do not treat concessions as gifts. Treat them as business decisions. That is sales lane. But the CSM can support the thinking by clarifying value, risk, relationship health, and customer priorities. Now, this also connects directly to the PRP, the program resiliency plan. If a price objection appears 6 months out, don't only treat it as a commercial note. Ask which dimension is weak. A relationship density is relationship density weak because only your champion understands the spend? Is narrative strength weak because finance has no value story? Are early risk signals present because budget pressure or tool consolidation? Are they active? Is services stability weak because delivery problems have really reduced or degraded trust? The objection is data. Don't waste it. Now, when you handle price objections well, you do 3 things at once. You make the customer feel heard. You keep the value story intact, and you protect the account team from reacting too quickly. That is senior level customer success behavior. Not panic, not concession, not defensiveness. Diagnosis, clarity, and coordination. So, let's recap. A price objection is not always a pricing issue. It may be affordability, value uncertainty, comparison pressure, or procurement pressure. The CSM's lane is not to negotiate terms. The CSM's lane is to diagnose the objection, to protect the value posture, and to bring the right commercial owner into the right conversation. You should validate the customer's need for budget discipline without agreeing that the product is overpriced. You should separate value from terms. Document the objection clearly and avoid any language that implies concessions that you cannot approve. Now, here's what I'd like you to do this week. Look at one renewal where price pressure is possible. Write down the 4 possible drivers, budget, value, comparison, and procurement pressure. Then identify which one is most likely based on evidence and not instinct. If you don't know, your next customer conversation really should clarify it. So follow the show on your favorite platform. Connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Mark Bernardin. And before you respond to a price objection, diagnose what it actually means. Thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work. And thank you for showing up and delivering every single day. I'll talk to you soon.